Hello family, my name is Chris, I am your home gamer dad, and today we will be taking on the role of robots in disguise, converting from vehicle mode to powerful fighting robot mode, as I show you how to play the solo mode variant of Transformers, the deck building game. Occasionally I'm going to mention cooperative, competitive, and team versus team as I go over this, but this is going to focus solely on solo mode. However, keep in mind that no matter what mode you play, it's pretty much the exact same game every time. At least the basic phases and what you do each turn and things along that way. There's going to be different end game results and a few different win conditions and lose conditions depending on what you play as, but generally this is going to be solo mode, but anything could really fall into the category of what I'm going to be showing today. Lastly, if you happen to have multiple expansions or core boxes like I have here, I did a video that shows how you can combine everything together into one box. So you can all keep it together into one storage unit. And then of course, taking those cards and creating your main deck, which is what you need in order to be able to play the game. So if you haven't seen that yet, go ahead and go check that out now. Once you're done looking at that, come back here and I will show you how to play. Time to choose your side. Are you going to protect this world as an Autobot or try to conquer it as a Decepticon? Ready? Transform? And let's get to this. Designed by Matt Hyra and Dan Blanche and published by Renegade Games, Transformers the deck building game puts you in control of your favorite giant fighting robot from the Transformers franchise. Each robot has their own unique abilities that they use to explore the Matrix, build up their deck, and ultimately uncover the bosses and defeat them. Just be sure you collect enough Energon to be able to convert and power up as you defend the world, or attempt to conquer it. The first thing you're going to want to do if you have multiple expansions or core sets is to decide which faction you want to play as. As of March 2023, there are only two factions, the Autobots and the Decepticons. If you don't happen to have an extra core set or one of these two sides, that's okay, you just play as whatever side you have. But if you have extras, you get to choose what faction you want to go with. Each robot has their own oversized double-sided character card along with a matching standee to go with it. You'll find character name, their faction, and what mode they're currently in on the top parts of their cards. For the alternate side, which is their vehicle mode, you'll again find all that information up top, but then you'll find their move values printed over here, along with any passive abilities that they have while they're in this form. Converting back to robot mode, or bot mode as it's labeled here, you'll find their passive abilities up here in this section, along with any Energon abilities that you have down here. Once you've decided which side you're going to play as, you're going to go and take the cards from the opposite faction for bosses, encounter cards, and either Decepticon schemes if you're playing as the Autobots, but if you choose to play as the Decepticons, you're going to want to find Autobot initiatives. Either way, you're going to want to find the opposite faction of whatever faction you are playing as. So I'm playing as the Autobots, I have Decepticon bosses, Decepticon encounter cards, and Decepticon schemes right there. Next, you'll want to grab your main deck or assemble it depending on what you have. All of that is covered in greater detail in a previous video, which I've linked in the description down below or it's on screen here. If you only have one core set, you can just take the main deck from the box and use that. But if you have additional core sets and or expansions, you're going to want to follow that video in order to learn how to create a main deck, what cards go into it, what values, things along that ways. This way you can be able to play any game type at all. But from here on out, we're just going to be talking about solo mode. Just remember, for solo mode, your main deck is going to consist of maneuvers, technology, allies, sight, robots from both factions. So I have Autobots and Decepticons. You are not using co-op schemes. You are not using relics for solo mode. I mean, you can. It's really up to you. But technically speaking, you're not supposed to, because those are more for competitive gameplay, and this is just solo mode. In addition to that, if you follow the video that I made when creating the main deck, I actually shuffled in 5 random scheme cards into the deck. I'm not going to do that for this, just to show you another way to set that up. But one of the things that you could do is shuffle in schemes into the main deck, so this way you don't know how many you're getting or when they will show up. With that said, and your main deck being constructed and your character chosen, let us begin the actual setup to play the game. To start off, you're going to want to build the matrix using cards from the main deck that you constructed. The matrix size varies based on player count, as shown by the chart over here on the screen. For solo mode, you're going to want to lay out a 3x4 grid of face-down cards from the main deck to create your matrix. So in the end, you're going to go, and it's going to look something like this. And again, these are all cards that you're going to immediately draw from the main deck that you have constructed based on the cards that you have in your collection. Next, you're going to want to create your new main deck. And the way you're going to do that is by taking cards from your current main deck and separating them into 3 piles. There's going to be a variety of cards in these piles depending on player count, and once again, here's that chart in order to be able to show you how many cards would go into each one of these stacks depending how many players you have. But for solo mode, we're going to have 3 piles of 7 cards each. So it's 2 cards, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 3 piles of 7 cards each. You're then going to create a 4th stack of cards that will consist of only 5 cards from your main deck. No matter how many players you're playing with, no matter the player count, this deck will always have 5 cards. So these 3 will vary depending on player count. This one will always have 5 cards. With these all laid out, the remaining cards that you've made from your constructed main deck are no longer needed for the rest of this game. You can push them to the side, and this way you can have something kind of pre-made ready should you want to play a second game afterwards. Next, you're going to want to find all the boss cards that you have for the opposite faction that you're playing against. Because I'm playing as the Autobots for this example, I have pulled out the Decepticon bosses. Each of the Decepticon bosses are ranked by level, so these are level 1. You're going to want to separate these. Level 2 and level 3. Now, I have a lot of the expansions. I have all the current expansions as of March 2023, so I may have a lot more bosses than you do, but it doesn't really matter so long as they're all within their selected level of stacks. You're then going to take each one of each level and either handpick or randomly select one from each level. So I have the level 1 bosses here. You're going to put 1 on top of the first stack. Level 2 bosses, as you can probably guess, will get shuffled or randomly chosen, and 1 will go on the second stack. And then your level 3 bosses will once again do the same thing. Shuffle them all and put them on the third stack. If you happen to have a boss that has multiple forms, like 6-shot, you're only going to want to put the robot form here. All of the other forms you're going to leave to the side whenever that one is revealed. If you did not shuffle any of the scheme or initiative cards into your main deck when you constructed it, this is what you're going to want to do. You're going to take all of the schemes or initiatives that you have. In this case, it's schemes because I'm playing as Autobots. Remember, if you're playing as Decepticons, you're going to have Autobot initiatives. So that would be the pile that you have. These are Decepticon schemes. You're then going to shuffle these up and either, well, again, either hand pick or random, and I like doing random. Place them 1 on each one of the decks. This is an alternate way of doing this instead of shuffling 5 random ones into the main deck and possibly have them show up or not. You're then just going to go through each one of the piles, give them all a good shuffle to make sure that your bosses and schemes are randomly placed throughout each one of these mini stacks, and then you're going to place them in order. 4 on the bottom, stack number 3 on top of that, stack number 2 on top of that, and then finally stack number 1. Do not shuffle this again. This is now going to be your new main deck for the remainder of the game, and this is also your timer for one of the lose conditions. Take that new main deck and you're going to want to place that to the left of the matrix. As you purchase or battle cards within here and they leave the matrix, this is where you're going to be pulling them from in order to refill it. Along this side of the matrix, you're going to want to put a few other stacks of cards. First, you're going to want to put the basic cards for whatever faction that you're playing as. For the Autobots, you're going to want Transform and Roll Out, which is here. If you're playing as the Decepticons, this is going to be Rise Up. A stack of damage cards, and I'm going to show you how to incorporate the special damage cards into this momentarily. And then the face-down stack of encounter cards based on your opposite faction. Again, because I am playing as the Autobots for this example, I have the Decepticons over here, which is Megatron over Optimus Prime. If you're playing the opposite, These will have Megatron on them, and this will have Optimus Prime over Megatron, just to show you the difference between the Autobots and Decepticon cards. For your side, you're going to want to take your character card and start them on their alt mode, so whatever their vehicle size is, and then you're going to go take the special 10 starter cards for your faction, in this case the Autobots, which is 6 courage cards, 1 fix, 1 patrol, 1 firepower, and 1 reserve. Give them a shuffle, and this will be your starting deck for the game. Now, there are different cards for the Decepticons. That is covered in the other video as well. Go take a look at that just to make sure you have the right cards. Give your character 2 Energon, and then maybe like 2 or 3 of these double-sided move energy tokens just to have to the side. I usually like just having a pile anyway in reserve, but it's good to have them at hand. And then you're going to want to take your character standee and place them anywhere you want on the matrix. I like starting in the middle personally, but you can literally start at any card at all. With all of that set up and ready to go, let me show you the special damage card rules, and then we are ready to play. Draw your top 5 cards from your starter deck, and then you are ready to begin your game. There are currently 3 different special damage type cards that you can add to your damage deck that are currently available. Short Circuit from Darkness Rising, T-Cog Jam from Infiltration Protocol, and Stasis Lock from Dawn of the Dinobots. The way that you incorporate these is by just taking them and shuffling them into your damage card deck. There are 5 of each card. You can use 1, you can use 2, you can use all 3. It doesn't matter. But again, you would just take them, say I'm using these 2, take them into here, and you would just shuffle them directly into your damage deck. But instead of your damage pile being face up like it normally is, you're going to want to put this face down next to your matrix. This way, when you take damage, you flip it over and see what type of damage you happen to be given. If you happen to draw a normal damage card, then this just sits next to your character card as normal and will start counting towards your 5 damage card lose condition for the game. If you happen to draw one of the special damage cards, it tells you right on the bottom, when gained, put into your discard pile. This immediately goes into your discard pile and then will be shuffled back into your deck later. Once it gets into your hand, you must immediately play it before you play any other cards on your turn, and then while this is in play and you control it, this will count towards your 5 damage total for a lose condition. This will also only happen for whatever turn you have this on, because at the end of your turn, this will go back into the discard pile. When removing damage cards from your bot, they are destroyed, meaning they are removed from the game. So no matter what, if these are on your robot and then they are removed, they are just taken out of the game, and you will continue drawing from this deck, hopefully not getting your 5 damage, and hopefully having enough power and resilience to defeat your enemy. In Transformers the Deck Building game, your robot will be moving around the matrix, uncovering cards in order to add them to your deck in order to become more powerful, and ultimately trying to find and defeat the 3 bosses that were shuffled into the deck. For solo mode, that is the only win condition. Find all 3 bosses and defeat them. There are 2 lose conditions for the game. The first one is if you go to refill the matrix and there is nothing left to draw from this deck. At that point, you have timed out the game and you have lost. The second way is taking too much damage. If you ever control 5 damage cards at any one time, you immediately lose the game. On your turn, you're going to do any of the following actions in any order as many times as you wish or are able to, unless otherwise stated. Move, play a card, search, buy or battle, activate Energon Abilities, convert, and confront a boss. Playing a card. This means taking a card from your hand and placing it in front of you in your play area. Once you do this, you're going to generate any energy or move that the card happens to produce, and then you will resolve any text on the card immediately. If an ability on the card says may and you choose not to resolve it, you cannot resolve it later. If it says may, you have to do it then or don't do it at all. There are Energon abilities that you will find occasionally on cards. Those can be played at any time during your turn or during specific conditions. For example, this courage card can only be played when you confront a boss. An example of may is this patrol card here. You may flip a card adjacent to your character. You don't have to do that, but if you choose not to and then you play another card, you cannot flip a card later. And the Fix ability here has a Energon ability that can be played at any time on your turn. It does not need to have a specific condition met. You can just pay the Energon, which is 1 in this case, and be able to destroy a starter card you control. I'll explain what it means to control and own cards in a little bit. Whenever you play cards and after you're done with their abilities, the cards will then produce various resources that you need in order to purchase or battle cards. You have movement points right here, which I'm going to explain in a minute, but first we're going to go over energy, what it does, and how to use it. Cards that produce energy will have this battery to the left side of their card with a number next to it. This shows you how much energy that card produces. You can either mentally figure out how many you have, or you can use these little tokens here in order to add it up. In any event, when you play a card, any resources that are produced, whether it be energy or move, are gone into a pool that you could use at any time on your turn. Energy is used to purchase cards that you find within the Matrix, whether that be the maneuvers, technology, or ally cards, or other robots from your faction, or you can use energy in order to battle robots from your opposite faction. In the upper left corner, you will see a value on every card that can be purchased in the Matrix. In order to purchase that, you must be on the card and have the energy in order to be able to afford it. So for mass displacement here, I would need 3 energy. Which means that I could use my 1 courage card and my 1 firepower card for 3 energy, flipping them to the side to show them that I have used them in order to say that I have spent 3 energy in order to purchase mass displacement. By doing so, mass displacement would come off of the board, and then this would immediately go into my discard pile for a future turn. If you have a range card, that means that you can interact with cards equal to the spaces orthogonally away from you to the range value, and the range symbol is right here, which is a red target symbol. So with firepower, it has a range of 1, which means that Optimus Prime can interact with this card, this card, this card, this card, or this card, because they all have a range of 1. Now, with that card, he can use the 2 energy that's on firepower because it's connected to the card. However, he cannot increase that at all with courage because courage doesn't have any range to it. This means that Optimus Prime cannot destroy Bombshell here because even though firepower has a range of 1, it only has 2 energy costs tied to it. He cannot boost it with courage because courage has no range. So the 3 that he would need in order to destroy Bombshell will not work. However, because Cosmo is 1 away and he does require 2 energy, he can then use that in order to get Cosmo and grab this robot and put that into his discard pile. Special note for ally and sight cards. Sight cards stay on the field and will have their abilities triggered throughout the course of the game. There are certain conditions that can be met depending on the card's text that will destroy it, but if there's nothing on here that says destroy this sight, then this will always be in the spot that it's in for the remainder of the game, doing whatever it is listed on the text. For allies, when you actually purchase an ally, instead of it going to your discard pile, it's going to go immediately next to your character. If you ever get to a situation where it says discard an ally card, this would then go into your discard pile from there, which then will be able to attach back to your character when you draw it later on. But remember, these do not immediately go to the discard pile, they go next to your character, and any text on them will immediately trigger and be active. Like sights, Autobot initiatives and Decepticon schemes stay within the Matrix, activating their ongoing or start of turn abilities until you do something to get rid of them. What you're going to want to do is thwart them, which is the key word right here. In order to activate anything it says, in order to thwart it, you're going to have to be able to meet the conditions that are written here. Most of the times you need to be on the card in order to thwart it, but there are certain times where you're able to do it anywhere in the Matrix. For example, in order to thwart the magnetized core, you got to buy, gain, and or defeat 2 cards in the Matrix in a single turn. That can happen anywhere on the field, but as soon as that condition is met, this card can be removed from the game as a destroyed card, and you will gain the victory down on the bottom. Discovering cards and moving around the Matrix requires move points, which you can either acquire through cards that have the symbol down here with the arrow on it, or from your alt mode. Your alt mode will generally have anywhere between 3 and 1 movement already built into it. When moving, you're only going to be able to move in orthogonal directions unless you have a card that gives you the ability to move diagonally, which I will talk about a little bit later. It costs 1 move to move 1 space. If you're using the movement from your character card, use one of these tokens here to show that you have used that 1 move from it. But if you happen to use one of your other cards that produce move tokens, turn it to the side in order to say that I have used that movement on that card. In order to move diagonally in the matrix, you're going to need a card with the flight keyword on it. When you have that, that means that any movement that that card produces, so like range with energy, it only comes from the card itself. You can't add this to any other movement points that you manage to generate. You're able to move that many spaces diagonally. So with Strafe here, it has flight and one movement. So that means Optimus Prime can either move one space orthogonally as normal, or he can move one space diagonally. Uncovering cards in the Matrix requires a search action, and every search action costs one movement. So again, if you have either your character card in their alternate mode or other cards that you have, you would need to spend one movement point, which you generate through all that, in order to be able to flip over a card. So I would actually say I would use Optimus Prime's second movement, so now he can't move anymore through his alt mode, and be able to flip over the card that you are on. The moment that you flip over a card, you have the ability to purchase it. So if I had the 3 energy, I could purchase that card immediately. Say you move on to a spot and you search it for these last 2 points here, and you happen to discover a robot of the opposite faction. This is considered an adversary. Any robot that you fight throughout the Matrix that is from the opposite faction that you are is an adversary. That is the definition of that I will be using for the remainder of the tutorial. If you happen to be in a spot where you flip an adversary, the first thing that you must do is you got to go to the encounter deck, flip open the first card, and resolve an ambush. Ambush is always the top part of this, and this generally has some type of bad effect that's going to happen to you and your robot. Blocking. If you have a card in hand, not played in front of you, with the word block in it, the keyword block, you can discard that card from your hand to your discard pile in order to completely negate the attack. Anything with the word attack added to it, so there will be some boss cards that say reveal attack, this just says attack, you may discard one block card per attack in order to negate it. So if you happen to get ambushed again, you would need another block card in order to stop the attack. Any resources that the block card would have produced, you do not get. However, there are block cards with a colon after it and some texts. If that's the case, when you use this card for a block, you trigger the ability. So in this case, because I used dodge to block this ambush, I could draw 2 cards into my hand. Say Optimus Prime is right here, and he was able to use his patrol card, which says you may flip an adjacent card face up. I've chosen to flip this one up, and oh no, it's an adversary. The ambush will not trigger because you need to be in the space for it to trigger on an adversary. Boss cards are different, and I'll explain boss cards a little bit later. Before going up to fight adversaries, it is definitely recommended for you to convert from alt mode into bot mode. If you have a card that says you may transform or you may convert and you play it, then you can flip this over. But if you do not, you can always spend 1 Energon in order to transform your character from their vehicle mode to their bot mode. Just keep in mind that these generally don't have any movement on them, so you're going to need to play cards with movement in order to put yourself into a battle position. Also, a note for converting, you cannot do it when any other action is taking place. Meaning if something like an ambush is happening, you couldn't convert midway through it unless you had an ability to do so. Otherwise, converting is its own action, and unless it's written on a card, it must be activated and resolved separately than any other card abilities or actions that you take on your turn. With that said, I would play this card Fix in order to be able to generate 1 movement, and then I could move into the same spot as Bombshell. Because I moved into a spot with an adversary, I would need to trigger and resolve another ambush card. Which again just means you would draw the top card from there in order to be able to do whatever it says on the top. If I had a block card, I could stop this. Otherwise that, I would have to gain 1 damage from this particular ambush card. With that resolved, this then goes to the discard pile, and I can fight Bombshell. To do that simply, I would just need to play cards in order to generate enough energy in order to be able to match or beat this number up here. So I would spend these 3 energy and Bombshell would be destroyed. He would then come out of the Matrix, go into a destroyed pile because he is no longer going to be coming back at all, in a sense. And then on the bottom down here, you have a reward that you gain. Normally, if you're playing any type of competitive thing, anything that says 1 VP is a victory point that you would gain. But in solo mode, anything that says 1 VP should pretty much be rated as 1 Energon. So instead of gaining 1 VP and destroying 1 card in your discard pile by defeating Bombshell, I would gain 1 Energon and I could destroy 1 card in my discard pile. He is then gone from the Matrix. If I needed a little extra help defeating Bombshell, I could activate Energon Abilities, which are either located on your character card or on cards that you play in front of you in your play area. You can only activate Energon Abilities once per turn, and you have to spend the required Energon in order to be able to activate them. So for Optimus Prime, I could spend 1 Energon in order to draw 1 card into my hand, thus helping me out, gaining more energy possibly, or I could spend 2 Energon in order to block an incoming attack. He does have a range to this. This is more for cooperative mode, where you can block attacks for other allies that you have on the field, second player, third player, whatever. But for right now, you could just spend 2 energy to just block anything. He also has his passive ability where if I happen to play an Autobot, it would gain 1 power, thus increasing his ability to bring the team together and just do more damage that way. Something to always take note of as you're playing are start of turn and ongoing effects. Ongoing effects are something that just happen that you're going to have to remember throughout the course of your game. In order to kind of remind yourself on stuff, you're going to take one of these tokens that say ongoing. So this way you can always look at this to make sure that you're following the instructions on the card every turn. Most bosses have a start of turn effect, so you're going to take one of these tokens and place that there to remind yourself that at the start of a turn, you're going to go ahead and activate whatever is written down here on the card that triggers at the start of your turn. Both of these are double-sided, so you're going to be able to get these from your core sets, and they're a really good way to remind yourself of things that happen throughout your turns or at the start of your turns as you make your way around the Matrix, because you may not want to fight a boss the moment that it's revealed. You may want to collect more cards in order to be able to get more power and thus increase your chances of defeating them. You've gone around the Matrix, you've collected some cards, you've beaten some adversaries, and now you're right here. You use a movement point to flip over the card, and lo and behold, you have discovered your first boss. Whenever you flip over a boss, the first thing you do is the reveal attack, which in this case usually has you resolve an ambush ability, and you have to do some other bad thing. For in this case, Soundwave says, discard 1 ally you control, then resolve an ambush. If you happen to have an ally connected to your character card, say this Sparkplug here, this would then disconnect from your character and go into your discard pile. You can put it back out later whenever you find it, shuffling back through your deck, but for right now, that would then go to the discard pile. You would then, as the card says, resolve an ambush ability. If I happen to be here and I played Patrol card, which enables me to flip an adjacent card and I flip over a boss, the reveal attack still happens, and whatever the ambush says still affects my character. In addition to that, there are boss reveal conditions on the bottom of all of the ambushes, and they generally say ambush hits all adversaries. So an adversary to the boss is all the players that are playing. So if you happen to be in a 2, 3, or 4 player mode, this would actually affect everybody in the Matrix. But because we're playing solo, we're the only ones that'll be taking whatever the negative effect happens here. This, of course, is still considered an attack, so you can discard a block card in order to negate it. So you're confident in the cards that you have in your hand, you have enough energy in order to hopefully be able to defeat him, you are going to want to confront the boss. First thing you're going to want to do is move on to the same space as the boss. You're not going to really find too much range that will be enough in order to defeat a boss. As with all other adversaries, the moment you land on here, you have to resolve an ambush from the encounter deck. So you've moved on to the space, you've done your ambush ability, now you're going to want to do all your setup before declaring that you want to confront the boss. This means that you can spend Energon in order to be able to convert into robot mode, and you're going to need to play cards down in front of you in your play area in order to be able to generate the energy that you need in order to defeat him. Now, there are cards down here that do say confront on them. Those can only be played after you have declared that you're going to be fighting the boss that you're on. But for right now, you're going to play as many cards as you want in order to be able to produce as much energy. And once you have all the energy that you want, declare that you're going to fight the boss. In which case, you're going to take all of the cards that were in the discard pile from the encounter deck, you're going to shuffle everything together back to recreate a full new encounter deck. You're going to draw the top card, and then you're going to resolve the boss confrontation, which is on the bottom. Generally, these are attacks, but occasionally you will have cards that do not say attack, in which case then you can't do anything about them. They are just effects that have to be resolved. After one of these is resolved, which you only draw one, I draw two just for an example. Once this is resolved, then you can go ahead and use whatever energy that you have stored up in order to be able to destroy the enemy that you're on. Say you draw an encounter card that says add to the adversary's cost. In this case, add 5. So now this 6 becomes an 11 and you need more power in order to defeat him. Now you can actually play the Confront abilities that are on the bottom of certain cards. All courage cards say play the top card of your deck. So you would spend 1 Energon in order to be able to draw the top card and put it immediately into play. You could do this as long as you have the Energon to play it, but again, only 1 Energon ability per turn. Heroic Effort says for 3 Energon, you could get +2 power for each adversary boss in play. So this would actually only add 2 to it, but it does require 3 Energon in order to be able to pull off. So you'd have to be able to play your cards and have the right amount of Energon in order to be able to defeat the enemy. But for this example, let's say we didn't draw that. We didn't need any of this extra stuff here. We can keep our Energon. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 energy, exactly what we need in order to defeat Soundwave here. Soundwave is then destroyed. He has gone out of the game, and we gained the victory at the bottom. In this case, it says 3 victory points, but because we are playing solo mode, he gives us 3 Energon instead, and this is then removed from game. Final thing to note with bosses, regardless if you beat them or not, say we beat Soundwave and he is out of the game, even if we didn't, it didn't matter. As soon as you are finished spending all of your energy and all of your Energon in order to try to defeat the boss, your turn immediately ends. At the end of any turn, this is what you're going to want to do. All your cards are going to go to your discard pile that you have within play. If you were fighting a boss confronting them, anything that you possibly still have in your hand will also go to the discard pile. Any empty space on the matrix will then get refilled from the top of the deck, regardless if you're standing on it or not. So if you had bought this card earlier, moved over and fought, then this would go ahead and refill there. And the last thing you're going to do before the end of your turn is you're going to draw back up to 5 cards. If you do not have 5 cards to draw, you're just going to take your discard pile, shuffle this all together to make your new draw deck, and then draw until you have 5 cards in hand. Say you didn't purchase anything on your turn, you didn't fight any bad guys or anything like that, so the matrix is completely full. Instead of taking from the top of the deck to refill the matrix, you're going to flip over the top card and take a look at it. If it is a non-boss adversary card, the card is immediately destroyed and removed from game, thus continuing your countdown to the end of the game. If you flip it face up and it happens to be a boss card, what you're going to do is you're going to choose any face up card that is currently in the matrix, remove that from the matrix, and replace that with the boss. You're then going to trigger the reveal boss text that happens to be on the boss that you put here. Say there are no face-up cards on the field and you happen to draw a boss. You're then going to pick any card in the matrix, flip that face-up, and that card is destroyed no matter what it is. It's a scheme, it's a boss, it's a site, it doesn't matter what it is. You then would take whatever card that is, destroy it, removing it from the matrix, bringing in the boss, and again, revealing the attack ability here, doing whatever it says on the card, and resolving an ambush. Again, regardless of whether you needed to replace cards in here or not, the last thing you're going to do on your turn is you're going to draw the 5 cards from the top of your draw deck, as I mentioned before, and then you're going to start a brand new turn. Don't forget to do any start of turn abilities like Skywarps here, and then of course keep an eye on any ongoing abilities. Play will continue this way until you have either destroyed all 3 bosses in the deck, which then you have won, you are victorious, or if you have gained 5 damage cards at one time and you control them in the beginning of your turn, or you have run out of cards in the matrix and you go to reload it and you cannot because then you have timed out the game. Those are your 2 lose conditions, and then of course the win condition, like I said, is defeating 3 bosses. There is one other type of movement that I didn't explain, and that is teleport. Skywarp here has the ability to teleport to any space. If you teleport to that space and an adversary has been revealed, you do not resolve an ambush card. Teleporting pretty much just drops you anywhere you want, and whatever card happens to be there, if it's face up, if it does anything to you, does not affect your character at all. Both the Autobots and Decepticons have basic cards, which is that stack above the damage. Basic cards can be purchased at any time during your game, and they always cost 2 energy in order to buy. So if you don't have anything in the Matrix that you want to buy, try to grab yourself a Transform and Roll Out or a Rise Up if you're playing as a Decepticon, because they do add 1 of each resource to you, so that's 1 range, 1 energy, and 1 movement, and generally give you the power to convert or transform. This says you may transform because it's an earlier version. The later versions of this game will say you may convert. This also has the ability Assist +1 power. Rise Up has that as well. I'll explain what Assist does a little bit later, but that's pretty much more of a cooperative thing rather than solo play. You're not going to worry about the word assist at all in solo play. There are cards that you have that make reference to things that you own versus control. You control cards that are in your play area and any allies that you control that are face up next to your character card. So anything in your hand is not something you control. You put it down in front of you, now you control the card. This is very important when using those special damage cards because the moment it hits your field in front of you, it adds to that 5 damage limit for solo mode play. Cards you own are anything that you control, so that's anything down here in your allies. You also own all cards in your deck, all cards in your discard pile, and all cards in your hand. Those are what you own. There's not too much more in terms of like what you can do with cards you own, but that's just the difference between control and owning cards. Destroy versus discard. Whenever you destroy a card, that is completely removed from the game. It's taken out of your deck, it's taken out of the game itself. You don't have to ever worry about bringing it back. There are a very few cards in the deck that will bring back destroyed cards. You want to keep them in their own pile, but you generally won't have to worry about them. If you have something that discards a card from your hand, that of course goes right to your discard pile. This will also happen with allies when they say discard, or as it says here with quick change, from your hand. Anything that says discard goes to your discard pile. Anything that says destroyed is removed from game. For schemes and initiatives, it's best to take note that you may come across some that you cannot accomplish as a solo player. For example, here, All-Out Assault, in order to thwart it, which is to get rid of it, I would need to block an attack against another player during any player's turn. Unfortunately, I would not be able to do this because in solo mode, I am only playing by myself. So that means this card, if I happen to have this shuffled into my deck and it shows up in my matrix, this is going to stay there for the rest of the game, and I would only be able to get rid of it if I have another card ability or some type of special thing in order to remove it from the matrix. Last thing I want to mention is Assist, which you're going to find on all of your basic cards, along with some of the abilities from whatever robot you happen to be playing, along with some cards that show up within the main deck itself. This is an ability in order to help out your fellow robots when battling adversaries. These cards are not used in solo play, or at least these abilities are not used in solo play, but if you happen to be playing two-handed, you're playing 2 robots on your own, so in a sense you're simulating a 2-player game, then yes, the assist abilities can be used. Whenever your character is damaged, you must use an assist card from another robot in order to be able to help them fight an adversary. And what's the benefit of assisting? Whenever you assist another robot in defeating an adversary, both of you gain the exact same reward for defeating the adversary. So if it happened to be, if you're doing competitive mode and Optimus is fighting an enemy that grants 3 victory points, and you use Transform and Roll Out to assist him, say you're Wheeljack and you help him, you would both gain the 3 victory points at the end of the battle in order to, work that towards your final score. It's just that Optimus would gain the enemy into his vault, whereas Wheeljack wouldn't, but they would both gain the same amount of victory points. Again, assist is only used if you're controlling more than one robot, whether you're actually playing 2-player or you are playing two-handed. Ultimately, in the end, there is one rule that will always be in effect, and that is the golden rule. If a card text contradicts any of these rules that I have talked about during the course of this tutorial, then the card will take precedence. Consider every rule in the game as also having the text, unless the card says otherwise. And there you have it. That's what you need to know in order to be able to play a solo game of Transformers, the deck building game. And again, if you have any questions at all about solo mode, cooperative mode, competitive mode, team versus team, whatever you have, the special infiltration protocol, doesn't matter what it is, be sure to leave them down in the comments below. I will try to get them and answer to them to the best of my abilities. I haven't played everything that this game has to offer yet, but I still should be able to help you out one way or another. And if I can't, I'm sure somebody out there can help as well. Thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial. I really hope that it helped out your game in some way, somehow. If you're still confused about anything, like you've asked questions and whatnot and you still don't know the answer, I will be doing sessions for these in the future, like really soon. I'll be playing as the Autobots and Decepticons, so you can actually watch me play through a full game and see how I do it, all the turn orders and things along that ways, and then hopefully that helps you understand the rules even further. Who knows, even after I'm done playing as the Autobots and Decepticons for one game, maybe I'll revisit this one day and I'll play as the Dinobots for one, play as the Decepticons for another, got the multi-changing 6-shot or whatever. There's so many different ways to play this game, even as solo, that I would love to be able to show you all that one way or another down the line. So, in order for you to not miss any future transforming action or any other fun videos that I put out for you to enjoy, be sure to subscribe to the Home Gamer Dad and join the family as we continue to move on game by game. You have all been more than meets the eye. Thank you again ever so much. Take care of yourselves and each other. We are family forever, gaming together. Doesn't matter what you align to, what side you play for, or anything along that ways. I am still proud to call each and one of you my family. Thank you again, and I will see you in the next one.